that's it. Yeah, so we got to tell the folks about the best chicken, if
Artis.
not in the state.
It is really, really good.
It's probably the best chicken in Columbia. And if you disagree, put in the comments, where is the best chicken? Because I'll go there on a Thursday.
I did get some people were telling me like a place in Columbia was better than Bernie's.
Well, so Zesto's, the West Columbia location, I've heard is really good. But it's always while the person is eating with us at Bernie's.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? But if y'all have not been to Bernie's Chicken on Bluff Road in Columbia, you are missing out.
It is worth the stop. It's like every trucker drives in for it.
Every blue collar. I feel like I'm back at my day job when I go in there, you know?
Yeah.
And we're just overdressed because we're still in our suits and whatever. But yeah, man, it's everybody. You know, they still got their safety vests on, their work boots. Every sort of blue collar profession around that area comes from all over to eat at Bernie's Chicken. There's a good reason too. I mean, I think that place has been around for a while, but
blue and white collar. I mean, it is the melting pot of South Carolina.
Yeah.
Everybody loves good fried chicken.
And, they have a 3-piece. I get the 3-piece dark with fries and slaw, a lot of hot sauce. Man, jam up, jelly tight.
What about the page that forgot your hot sauces?
So we're going through one of these. I can't remember if that was that Tuesday or Wednesday? I can't remember.
It was this was during the Health Czar bill.
Okay. And so we're arguing over DHEC and everybody. And, I got to remind myself it's an election year. Everybody who is facing re-election wants to get up there, get some video feed so they can repost on social media or, justify to their voters that they're working for them, which is okay. I get it. But Guffey and I were like, man, what was it, like 2 o'clock? We're like, we were pushing. And I try not to eat till 3 anyway, so I was like, man, I'm starving. And, clearly.
Heath wrote his order down first.
Hash and rice with hot sauce.
Oh, but I don't know where that food come from. But that hash was, oh my God, it was so good. It's mustard-based hash.
Oh, yeah, that was Hudson's.
Oh, man, that was delicious.
That was Hudson's, so. And
I love my barbecue, but that hash was.
I can just eat hash and rice, and that's lunch, I mean, if you do hash right, and not a lot of people do hash anymore, only, the true believers do hash. And when you got it right, you got it right. And don't disagree with you. That was good. It would have been better with hot sauce. But anyway.
I can't do the hot sauce.
Yeah.
Too much heartburn over here to deal with those spices.
Oh, man.
All right, so we need to welcome people back to Pints and Politics. What, episode 9?
Yeah. Number 9.
Today's episode is brought to you by,
as always,
Comer Distributing. Yep. And today's pint.
Man, another good beer from our friends up there in Fort Mill, Amor Artis Brewing. We're drinking their MARZEN lager. It is a little darker.
Yeah, but it's not bad.
Reddish brown in color. So it kind of scared you a bit. But it does have depths of flavor that, your Bud Light doesn't.
It wasn't that Don Chapman dark, whereas
a
mill in a can. He's drinking those Ensure beers.
Yeah, right. Oh boy.
Hey man, I used to love Ensures. So whenever I was little, we lived at this apartment complex, and one of the things that I would do is I would go around to the elderly out there because.
Kick their cane, push them over, and steal their money.
Well, it started off just like trying to help out there, and they would always take their trash bags and they would just bring them to the front door.
Oh, okay, and you take them to the curb?
Yeah, and I would just grab them and take them to the curb, just like helping. But all those old women would always bring me in, chat with me and everything. And
have a dark beer?
Well, they would give me an Ensure because it was the only thing that was chocolate that they had. So I would drink an Ensure. Like, I love them.
Oh, man. I don't think I've ever had an Ensure.
Don't send me into a CVS. I might walk out with a 6-pack of Ensure.
Hey, need to call for a new sponsor.
It's like that the
Ovaltine.
Yeah, my hip ain't breaking.
Yeah. Yep. Also, want to mention 742 North here, providing the podcast studio. Also, if you're looking for a workspace or an office, give 742 North a try.
Yes. We still got our 19th hole cups, too.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't wait for it to open.
Man, I tell you, I was thinking about that on the way over here. I don't know if Harrison and his team have it in the works, but league night, you know? I could totally see golf league where you incorporate handicaps of 35 like you and I versus someone who's got a 10 handicap and you can still hang and play with them, you know?
I wonder if it'll be open in time for us to do like our campaign kickoff there.
I don't know.
That would be great.
They are shooting for April.
Oh, well, yeah. No, we got to kick off before then.
So it's just after that. But
yeah.
But yeah, man. So, well, let's recap the week, man. How was yours? I tell you, it seemed like I just felt exhausted this week.
Yeah.
You know, it was things that, you know, on paper, you sort of thought that they were going to go.
Should have been simple.
Yeah, right. I mean, we're talking about downsizing government agencies, streamlining, trying to make it more efficient, trying to deliver services offered by the government quicker, easier,
I think
those types of things.
Yesterday was the most frustrating to me because we had Winthrop University there.
Yep.
And we were supposed to meet with all these kids. You know, they've driven up. Thursdays are typically fairly short. And we had the Convention of States bill on yesterday. And it just became an argument of...
the one about the balanced budget. We as a state were going to recommend a balanced budget constitutional amendment to the federal level.
Yeah, so Article 5, if you are unhappy with your federal government, there are two ways you can change it. You can do it through 2/3 of both bodies can agree and kind of override and amend the Constitution, or you have to have the states agree on the same language. So we already had a convention of states that said term limits and a balanced budget.
Right.
That's already been passed.
Well, and let's back up for the two listeners. When you talk about if you want to amend the Constitution, that high threshold of 2/3 majority in both houses, folks, we can't even agree on a southern border relief.
I mean, truly, our
you know what I mean?
Congress hasn't done anything in 10 years.
Yes, correct. We can't even do that. So I interject to say option one is out.
Right.
You know, you are not putting a constitutional amendment on our founding document by that route.
Right. And the last time we got this close, it was employed by Ronald Reagan while he was president. And he wanted to make an amendment. And whenever they got close to that last state, I think he even called and said, hey, Congress is going to make the change. Let's let them do it. But this is a way for the states to have a voice. It's written in the Constitution for us to be able to do this.
Yes.
But the problem became is you had the left scaring people that we were going to do away with the 14th Amendment and we're all going to become this racist nation once again. That was the committee argument. So whenever it started getting argued on the floor, I'm just like, oh, my goodness.
Oh, boy.
And so I had to sit through that in the committee on Tuesday with Rep. King sitting there saying that we're not trying to protect minorities. And
so that's where the amendment came from as far as, you know, I think we gave instructions that you could not, you know, try to mess with those amendments.
And we write it on there that says this only pertains to this issue. So if someone tries to edit that or change that, let's say someone wants to get rid of the Second Amendment.
Right.
Then it goes back to all the states, and you have to have, I think it's 38 states agree for that to be heard.
Language. Right. Yep.
The chances of that happening, I mean, look at our presidential election, look how divided we are as a country. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, right. And folks, a PSA for this episode, I will always advise to be weary of anyone running for a political office that tells you what to be scared of and who's to blame for it. Right?
Fear is the way people have been getting elected for 10 years now, and it just doesn't go away.
I tell you, it's the classic politics. It's the old school political recipe to win an election.
Right.
And it's something that I just don't prescribe to. And again, not being a career politician like you and I are not, we want to be part of a solution. And we know those fear tactics just, man, it just alienates the normal American voter, you know?
It's dishonest, and it is truly lying to the people to get them.
It's misleading. It's bull earmuffs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
we had that, and like I said, the left is scaring people about the 14th Amendment. Well, then you had the Freedom Caucus members start chiming in to make it fearful that we're going to remove the Second Amendment.
Yes.
And essentially that narrative comes from the John Birch Society, which was anti-Ronald Reagan. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, everyone's listening to them now. So for those that say, even during the questioning, you know, whenever I talked to Jordan Pace and I brought up Reagan, you know, his response is, well, Reagan grew government and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, that's not exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to do just the opposite here.
We are literally basically recommending that in a convention of states circumstance that, or we use that path to get a balanced budget amendment.
Correct. And that's all the request was. Should have been simple. And then I really got scared whenever RJ said, hopefully we'll be out of here by 5 o'clock because of my kid's soccer game. And I was like, you know what?
He's trying to motivate.
I'm thinking, oh, God, we're definitely going to be here past 5 because now he's told somebody and they're going to try and, you know, just hold it up. But, yeah, it seemed like everyone was just trying to get their talking points in. And I didn't even see what the final vote was, like the board vote.
I think it was 80-something to 20 or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we can pull it up through the website, but
yeah, so, there was a lot of fear mongering.
That was my general feeling this week, was just fatigue, man. I was like, guys, and again, I think it's in my DNA to be a little impatient. You know, I want to next.
God forbid you be a business owner.
You know, and it's just, man, that I think that's what frustrated me the most was hearing the rhetoric.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like, this is so. That's what it is. It's rhetoric. It's political theater.
It was funny to watch some come up there and weren't arguing for, weren't arguing against, because it was obvious that, you know, they're getting support from two organizations that are on the opposite end of that.
that was amusing. You know? Yeah.
It was like, let me stand up here and let me make them feel like I'm supporting them. Let me make them feel like I'm supporting them. But in the end, I don't really disagree.
I'm not really sure where I stand on that. But I'll probably vote for the bill.
Yeah. But so that was a big one. And then yesterday we had another situation that I think is important to bring up because we had a rep come up to me and said, hey, I was out during the restructuring of DHEC bill, and I want to bring it was Tom Davis's resolution to
the concurring resolution,
just to state that we agree on finding or supporting future energy.
Oh yes,
correct. So the rep was out on Wednesday and then came up and said, hey, you know, I'm going to call for a roll call. Can you be one of the 9? Which, if you want a roll call vote that pops up on the board, you have to call for it, which roll call. That's how Thomas Beach got his name. Yep. He was always calling for the roll call. And asked, you know, would you support a roll call? I said, no, you can go up there and to the desk and tell them how you voted.
So tell the two listeners how you can do that. If you miss a second reading roll call vote. Yeah. The following day we get a third reading, which is usually ceremonial.
Correct. And then you can have all the people that you want on it, right? The third reading is pretty simple, but the second reading is typically where the debate happens.
Yeah.
The problem becomes, and I didn't know this until almost done with my first session, but if you miss a vote, you can just simply go up to the desk and say, hey, this is how I meant to vote on this. I was out in the lobby talking with a teacher that came to visit.
Yeah, you're going to the bathroom. For whatever reason, you were out of the room when the bell rings.
Correct.
To go vote.
So you didn't get your vote in. And this person wanted to do a roll call vote. And I said, no, you can just go up to the desk. They said, well, I need it for my voting record. Okay, well, if you go up to the desk, anybody pulls your voting record, it will show where you stood on it.
Yep, there's a sheet. The clerk, someone on the clerk staff will give you that you can put the bill number, how you want to vote, and you sign it and put your district.
Correct. And I said, no, I'm not going to support a roll call vote. Just go up there. And it's like, why won't you support that? I said, because you're using it for campaigning.
Right.
That's not what we are here to do. That is slowing things up. You just want to do another roll call vote to throw in the mix of everything we got going on, simply so
you can take a picture of the board.
So you can take a picture of the board, and that's part of your campaign material. That's all that it is.
Yes.
And those things frustrate me. And we're seeing a lot more of that. I mean, we've seen it last year, and maybe it was happening more, and I just was so new I wasn't catching on.
Right.
But it's frustrating to me.
Yeah. That's not why we went.
Correct.
That's not the impetus of why we do what we do there in the House.
We want transparency on how we vote. All of that information's out there. Anybody that wants to look to see how you vote, all that information's out there.
Yeah.
But to call a roll call just so you can get a picture of the board again.
Yep.
Speaking of, the funniest picture I saw was somebody took a picture of Davey Hyatt taking a picture of the board and posted it. So that tells you the lie about you can't take a picture of the board because there'd be many members that were kicked out.
Oh, I think you and I even joked around like, man, we should just take pictures of members taking a picture of the board.
That would be very easy for us sitting beside of Rob and Josiah.
Yeah, I'm telling you, every amendment, they'll take a picture.
Yeah.
And it was funny. I think one of the Morgan brothers wasn't there half the day or something during one of these bills, whether it was the balanced budget or whether it was the restructuring or the health policy bill. And, for the two listeners, if you vote in the affirmative, you're green, your name is green. If you vote in the negative, obviously it's red. If you're not there or choose to abstain, it's white. Well, one of the Morgan brothers' names was white, and Rob Harris is taking a picture, and I said, hey, Morgan's going to have to answer for that vote.
Wonder if he got a kick out of that.
You can't take it too seriously, No,
and some people do. But, I mean, I enjoy it. One of the other,
and I hope, and I'm pretty sure Rob and Josiah know our hearts. They know.
Yeah.
Listen, we may differ on things, but
the only thing I don't like is whenever they post on social media.
I do not like the governing via social media. While we're sitting there in our chairs.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I've turned you before.
Yeah.
Just my blood pressure goes. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Why are we doing Facebook posts?
Why are we tweeting? So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a good use of taxpayer dollars to be sitting there on your social media running your campaign, right?
Yeah. So, do we want to get into the House Bill 4927? This was the Executive Office of Health and Policy. So, give the listeners a little bit of background on that. So, last year, we voted to basically restructure DHEC.
We had to split it because you've got environmental and healthcare together.
Right. And there was, and I don't even know, do you know how many departments or agencies were under that umbrella?
7.
7?
Yeah.
Okay. And now it's going down to 6? Or?
It's going down to 6, but...
well, no, that's just on the health side.
This is just on the health side, yes.
Right. The environmental control...
I don't know that we've done a restructuring on that. We just separated it out.
We haven't, but just to give the two listeners, I believe there's something like, let's say, 25 agencies, and when it's all said and done, we're going to get it down to like 19 or 20.
Yes.
Right? So the environmental control side is going to be the other piece. We tried to tackle the health side first, and that is...
purely restructuring.
Yes.
So it's taking... so the Department of Mental Health and the Department of Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services, which were two of the major ones that we had problems with, because if you were hooked on an opioid and you had a mental health disorder,
Yep.
No one wanted to help you. You're getting bounced back and forth.
And God forbid you also have a criminal record.
Correct. I mean, there's so many. So you had the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Public Health, Department of Aging, Department of Disabilities and Special Needs, Department of Mental Health, Department of Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services. And we combined it down to smaller agencies. And this was done by hiring a consulting group, Boston Consulting Group,
Yep.
which goes through and says, this is the way that we need to restructure. We weren't changing the language or anything else.
No.
We're just eliminating what currently has 7 board members and saying we're going to put one person that answers to the governor so that way they can oversee. So essentially a COO.
It's called accountability.
Yes.
Right? The governor, we talk about accountability with judicial reform. How do we do that? Let's get the executive branch involved. We've got the Senate and the House. Let's all get in this boat together and we're all accountable, right? Now we're saying, hey, Governor, you're going to have a cabinet position. This is this health and policy director, and he or she will answer to you. And if they're not doing a good job, guess what?
And the governor is elected
get the hook.
by popular vote.
Right. Whereas, So I had a good conversation with Lee Hewitt, who is a rep out of the Georgetown area. And I didn't know this until this bill came up because he was standing up front. He is a former DHEC board member.
Yeah.
And, he just talked about his experience. He said, Heath, this is an attempt to get people whose expertise is in health, substance abuse. Yeah. All of those things sort of in this agency and to lead this agency. He's like, man, I'm a realtor.
It's shutting down a lot of the bureaucracy that's in there and people like realtors sitting on the board.
No offense to realtors, but you don't want to get on the DHEC board.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and he also talked about when the governor appointed board members, they would serve on a term and they could not be removed except without cause. And so it just made it a tug of war.
Correct. And
when you had an ineffective board member. So, that's one of the motivations for this too.
correct. Well, a lot of it is purely restructuring. And that became the problem is it got spun as a health czar bill saying that we're bringing Fauci to South Carolina.
I thought he was coming in to speak. As many times as I heard his
Health
name
czar. Yeah.
and health czar,
Yeah.
But
that became the fear is that because this board had the power to, bring in police or require police to come out and do this work. And we even had a sheriff in Greenville County. Like, does he not know the current law?
So that was part of that title and section and chapter where I think it was 44-1-100 that talked about in a health emergency, the DHEC board or the DHEC director could make directives, and the sheriffs
To
local
law enforcement to come out and assist.
must assist in that coordinated effort.
Right. And the reason being is because let's say you've got, let's just break it down to something simple. Someone's having a mental breakdown and you've got to send that and you need to admit this person to a mental health facility.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to call the police and say, or the sheriff's department and say, hey, I need your assistance with this. And the sheriff could say, well, I'm not getting paid anything extra for this. I'm not dealing with it.
Right.
Especially as political as these positions go now, you could have someone that does that. However, this person answers directly to the governor, and the governor can get rid of them. And so if someone was to overstep, we've got the checks and balances.
Right. And again, this is in relation to health emergencies. And I think what we saw on Wednesday in some of the debate and the discussion on this bill, man, was purely some
campaign material.
I was going to say it was a direct result, I think, of our experience that we just came out of, right? It was frustrations that folks...
They're scared people are going to be forced to be vaccinated.
Right. And so back to that 44-1-100, folks, that language has been in our code since 1908. Okay? 1908. 1908.
Not as if it's happened.
And it has been tweaked and modified and amended several times since 1908, but that language survived.
I was thinking it was 1905, but you might be correct in 1908.
Well, a senator told me that, so the information may be suspect.
If the senator said it, it must be true.
But no, so yeah, I mean, this type of language has been in our code for over 100 years, and at no point has and again, a comrade, health czar, whatever socialist term you want to give this director, has he ever, came in and started, I don't know, interning South Carolinians?
Correct. So I actually spoke on this because I was getting frustrated. So Representative White stood up at the well. He's given his view of this as being a health czar bill. And I broke down like the restructuring and how we are simplifying this. Instead of having 7 people to make a decision, we've got 1 that we can hold accountable.
Yes.
And, he brought up in 1994 or something how
1995, the federal government
started to expand. I don't disagree with you. That's one of the problems that we have with DHEC. It is too massive, and we are trying to shrink it down.
Yep. And again, I heard a lot of that. I think I talked to Representative Pace, went and sat down while his seatmate had gotten up, and him and I spent probably 10 minutes talking about some of this stuff. And I said, Representative Pace, you are taking a bill, and then if this, then this. Right. I said, bro, there's like 3 or 4 ifs in there.
Yeah.
And I could do that to any well-intended
legislation. I think they do that to any well-intended legislation. That becomes the problem.
And again, so I think at the end of the day, like I told Representative Pace, I said, hey, man, you do understand at some point we're going to have to trust one another. At some point, the people are going to have to trust their elected officials. At some point, we're going to have to trust that the governor knows what he's doing when he's picking his directors.
Well, Pace probably feels the same way I do. Like everyone else is a politician. I'm not a politician, but that's probably the way he feels. But whenever you're trying to bash that everyone there is corrupt, then you're saying you are corrupt.
And again, so we just have to be diligent in our efforts in what we're doing.
Yeah.
So when we go to restructure DHEC, we're establishing this health side. We're going to establish the environmental control side. And you and I just need to hold each other accountable and other members accountable. Correct. And say, hey, guys, we committed to our voters and to the state that we were going to streamline government. We were going to.
This was the Republican Party's #1 objective.
Streamline means to hold and then shrink
Correct.
The amount of folks, the amount of money, and all those things. So, and that's part of the process.
And efficiency. I mean, our citizens are suffering whenever they can't get help because you've got a pissing contest between the head of one agency and the head of another agency, and neither one of them wants to help.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, let's just stay on top of this as we go through. But this restructure is going to take the rest of this session and probably the next one. And then we'll just have to keep monitoring it, annually, year to year, if we're there. So
I still got one more point on it.
Yeah,
we'll get to it. All right.
All right. Last point.
Yeah. So we had a piece of paper passed out on our desk, and that was passed out by Representative Pace, and it says the South Carolina Physicians for Freedom. And as we start looking at this, and you start looking
that sounds awesome.
Sounds like the South Carolina Physicians for Fake Freedom is what it sounds like to me.
South Carolina Physicians for Freedom.
So if you go to the website.
Long storied history of.
The website's basically set up for 1 year. It might exist in other places, but there's listed no members. Running a nonprofit, I'm learning a lot about this. And the one rule that we have as a nonprofit is whether you can lobby or you cannot. You have to register in order to be able to lobby. What this letter does is it is truly a lobby to every member of the House. And it is stating that they want more efficient health care in the state. They strongly oppose the passage, do not believe it will serve better the health care, but instead continue the unnecessary expansion of government overreach and a continuation of a breach between sacred doctor-patient relationship. So I started questioning that. I walked out after I got done with my questions, but this organization is not showing that's in South Carolina. It doesn't list any members. I walked out because I was kind of frustrated after dealing with it.
Again, trying to have a good faith discussion.
Correct. And whenever I walked out, I think it was Representative Ann Thayer. I started going back and trying to get my little clips that I can use, like, hey, this was me questioning this. Ann Thayer is the one that come up, and she's like, okay, I want to piggyback on what Representative Guffey said. Mm-hmm. And she says, this is showing that's based in Wisconsin, so all this talk of dark money and all this other stuff, this is some group.
Wait a minute. That's impossible. It says South Carolina.
Correct. But yeah, I mean, the group is based in Wisconsin. I'm still trying to figure out, are they a subgroup that is registered as a lobbying group? And I'm going to continue to push this.
Yeah.
Because this is lobbying 100%. And
they're not registered.
They should be held accountable if they are lobbying.
Right. Yep.
On the floor.
And I do think that when you were questioning Representative Jordan Pace, he said that there was a doctor in Mount Pleasant.
One or two doctors. He said one of the doctors was one of the ones during COVID that got, I guess, sanctioned for prescribing
ivermectin or
unorthodox medication, which I don't think that's right. I think a doctor should be able to make the decision, right? So they're perhaps the person that's part of this is upset because their freedom was being taken away from their profession.
Yep.
I can agree with that, but that has nothing to do with the restructuring of DHEC.
Totally agree.
This is just trying to get someone else to say, oh, well, we've got doctors that disagree.
Yep.
Whereas, and then we heard these claims of lobbyists controlling. Like, who the hell is lobbying DHEC? Nobody's lobbying DHEC. Like, this is the most ignorant argument that I heard. Like, lobbyists are buying this stuff.
It almost was like verbal clickbait.
That's all it was. It's campaign clickbait, or as Micah called it, bumper sticker politics.
Yes.
That's what it is. Let me get my clip in so I can run on it and put it on a bumper sticker.
And again, I don't know where you are with COVID or but I think I wore a mask for a little while, especially when private businesses, when COVID just happened. Man, I wore a mask.
I just put panties over my face.
There you go.
Yeah, walking into a restaurant, like, I don't care about your health code. You made me wear a mask, so I'm wearing panties.
Yep, and
not really. A friend of mine did that. I wish I would have thought of it.
Did you use the granny panties or the South Beach
G-string? Just a little triangle over. I got to show the beard. I can't cover the beard, right?
So but all I mean to say is, I'm definitely one of those folks that are probably more aligned with the Joe Rogan opinion of COVID. I was, hey man, let doctors and patients figure this thing out for case by case. I think if you look back on it now, the appropriate measures would have been, hey, if you're vulnerable, if you're 65 and older, y'all need to quarantine.
Or overweight.
Yeah. If you have comorbidities, y'all need to, Everybody else, let's do this thing called life because everyone depends on us going to work and doing our thing, And
as a business owner that dealt with the public coming in, I had to have the conversation with my employees like, hey, is anyone at risk? How does everyone feel about this? Because bottom line is, if I had one employee that said, my kid's battling cancer and I've got to be extremely concerned about this, then I might tell people you've got to wear a mask while you're at work. And I'm not one of those that thought that you can take away. Now, the vaccine's a completely different story. But I didn't think that you can take away the right of a business to say you have to wear a mask, because we do it all the time. We do it with, whether it's a medical professional, whether it's construction. I cut concrete.
Right.
And when cutting concrete, you've got silica dust that can cause cancer. And mesothelioma and all these other things. So you need to require your employees to wear masks at those times. So therefore, they're not turning around and saying, well, you didn't warn me about this, and now I'm dying from this.
Correct. Speaking of, and this is, we're off the weekly recap portion of the podcast, but did you see that New York Post article? Scientists claim smoking gun evidence COVID-19 intentionally created by researchers in Chinese lab.
I heard that back whenever it first started. I had a friend that was of the, you'd say black ops mentality that literally told me that this was being created in a lab and essentially that it was released to kind of try and teach China a lesson, and then it spread out worldwide.
What?
Yeah, this was back at the beginning, the very beginning of COVID, I was told that. And the more the information started coming out, instead, people were too worried about whether someone called it the Wuhan virus or which that was one of the discussions we had on the floor.
Hey, I tell you, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. When Jon Stewart went on the Stephen Colbert late night show and he said, I mean, come on. He was like, does it really take, a genius to figure out that there's literally called China has a Wuhan Institute of Virology and, this type of thing started in Wuhan? Yeah. And I think the parallel that he drew was, listen, if I was in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and all of a sudden a volcano of milk chocolate goodness came running down Main Street in Hershey, could it come from the Hershey factory maybe? Right. So,
yeah, but I think the discussion we had on the floor, I think Representative White called it the China virus.
Yeah, he did.
And then other reps started twisting the words and saying you're calling it the Chinese virus, and as if it's talking about people, which was not correct. But there's nothing wrong with a lot of our viruses are identified from whence they came.
Yeah. Right. Spanish flu.
Yeah.
And
but you don't want people getting hated on just because someone thinks that they're Chinese.
I'll be interested to see how history looks back on this time.
Oh my God.
I
can see the headline now. Show.
I mean, you see, HBO's got a special. I think Paramount has a special on the opioid crisis.
Yeah.
And, you watch these things, and that's only been, 15, 20 years? And you look back on that, like, how in the hell did we allow this to happen,
Because we're too busy trying to sit here and say, well, I'll give you an example on this, because this will relate back to a committee. The problem is we have something that comes up, and we as elected officials do our best to address the issue, and we write a law. Well, we see that went wrong. And what we should have done is we should have just simply reversed course. And instead, what we do...
But you can't... Folks, especially with a microphone and a camera around, they are not going to admit they're wrong.
I'm happy to admit that I'm wrong. If you think that I'm right all the time, then you need to be checked out.
I think you and I both are like, I could have made a better decision on that one.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be able to look back and say, hey, could I have done this better? What would I have done better?
Yeah, correct.
And that's where experience as a business owner, you learn that is that experience that makes you better.
Yes.
As politicians, we might not want to admit that we are wrong, but if we can look at that and say, this was experience, I should have made a better decision.
Yep.
And moving forward, this is the decision, and this is the way I'm going to look at it.
Being transparent and honest in politics, I think, lends to credibility.
I agree.
And credibility goes a long way, especially in this game.
Which, truthfully, that's the reason I lost credibility in the Freedom Caucus, was the spin. I didn't feel like it was credible or honest. So I agree with what they push. I just don't agree with the credibility and the honesty of it.
It's maybe some of the policy, but it's just not how we get there.
In subcommittee, we were talking about the Obamacare for bars, as Heath Sessions properly called it, and then another rep kind of
ripped that off.
But yeah, I mean, it was essentially like, how do we solve this liquor liability issue? And the solution was, we're going to create another group of government. And we're going to fund it. Now, all that stuff has changed and it's kind of being reworked now.
Yeah.
But as we're having that conversation, I was the only one on judiciary that voted against it.
Right.
And whenever I'm talking, I said, look, we've got to learn that whenever government makes a mistake, we need to reverse course. In my opinion, that's what's wrong with many of our school policies. Once we implemented technology and we see that people aren't learning how to read as well, perhaps we should reverse course.
Or write as well.
Not implement additional apps to use and control and additional technology that's not helping the student themselves.
Yeah, right. Yeah, which I tell you, man.
Our solution seems to always be more government, and I'm always going to try to fight for less government.
Yeah, well, I'll get in that boat with you.
Yeah. Is 7 larger than 1? Because I had that argument with Beach. I took him, like, I love Beach because we'll argue back and forth, and it's still like, love you, brother, and walk out.
Right.
But we're out back, and I said, so let me ask you, is 7 larger than 1? Because he kept saying we're growing government.
And for the 2 listeners, those numbers reflect 7 board members of DHEC currently down to 1.
Yeah, we're going back around, which our producer's not going to like because we're going back to the previous subject. But we're having the conversation out back, and I said, is 7 larger than 1? He was like, well, in this case, 1 is larger than 7. I said, well, I will use that saying next time I'm talking to my wife. But right now, we're talking about reality. So one of my questions to Pace was, I think that was my final question, is 7 larger than 1?
Yeah.
So,
and he agreed?
Yes, he agreed. 7 was larger than 1. And I immediately walked off and pointed at Beach, and I was like, you see that? 7 is larger than 1.
Let's see, what else we got?
I got you all spun off, sorry.
No.
Well, we've got a local issue that's come up. I don't know if you want to talk about this or not, but I'm happy to. Whereas we have a transgender teen using restrooms at a local high school. It has caused many of the girl parents to reach out that are very upset. I didn't think this was a problem. I thought the rule was that we have to make sure that there is a bathroom appropriated. So whether that's a single-use bathroom or whether it's teacher, staff bathroom.
A lot of times at the nurse, they have a bathroom.
Yeah.
I've heard that the nurse's bathroom is the cleanest bathroom in Rock Hill High. So,
I'm sure it is.
So a lot of kids will feign the my tummy hurts, or
go to the nurse's bathroom.
Yeah, that's right.
They never let me in any staff bathroom. They knew I was going to try to smoke in there. So. They needed me in the open, right?
Yeah.
So, but this became an issue because many parents started reaching out and feeling uncomfortable that their daughters are being in a restroom with a biological male, which we just had the case in Texas, whereas the biological male identifying as a female that went into the restroom ended up that the headline was, essentially that they were beat up, ended up dying from their wounds.
Yep.
Had a concussion, went to the hospital, checked out, went home, went to sleep.
Yep.
Died.
Wasn't fully diagnosed. Probably should have kept them overnight.
Right.
Yeah.
But of course, everyone relates this to say, oh, well, this is bullying of transgender kids. Well, whenever you actually start reading the article, instead of just reading the headline, you find out that the person that was attacked went and poured water on 3 girls, and those girls attacked them.
Yeah.
I mean, which is going to happen. I mean, I think that's pretty common. But bottom line is, I don't care what you identify as. If you're born with a penis, I don't want you in the restroom with my daughter or someone else's daughter. Because biologically, we are built different.
Yeah.
This goes back to the Riley Gaines swimming situation.
Again, man, I don't know how we got here in society and in culture.
I'll go back to the description. Shit show.
I mean, guys, the little things like these things these are elementary in my opinion. And if we can't get these right, it's going to be a long day.
I think it goes back, and we've had this discussion before, but I truly think it goes back to algorithms. I think the algorithms within our social media and online, I've used this example, and I'm not sure if I've used it on the podcast, but say 2 12-year-old boys are playing by the creek, one gets an erection, they don't feel like they can talk to their parents, they go home, they Google, am I gay because I got an erection? In a very short time period, they're not just trying to answer that question. They're on these chat boards with people that are struggling with their identity,
right?
And they're finding acceptance in, I can just identify as whatever I want to be. Do I feel that there are people that are truly trapped in another body the way that they feel? I believe that they truly feel that way.
Right.
But biologically, you are built different. And I I don't have as much of a problem with someone that identifies as a girl going into, someone that identifies as a boy going into a boy's restroom, as I do someone that is physically, that has more physical characteristics that could truly dominate a girl should they choose to or have an issue. So let's say they get into a fight. Just because you identify as a girl, if you hit my daughter, you can get hit like a man. I don't care what you identify as if you're a man. You know, we've raised with that. It's like, don't hit a woman, period.
Yeah.
But if
correct. You don't lay hands on.
Yeah, but if you've got a pecker and you hit me, I'm going to hit you. I don't care what you identify as.
Oh, well, so, and again, I'm not an attorney, but this is not that difficult. You are XX or you are XY, and you need to go to the appropriate bathroom. Here's another thing too. What I don't want to do is try to be an ideologue or demagogue this young person either, right?
Correct.
Is it a?
It's
a boy going into a girl's bathroom.
Yeah, that's what the situation is here.
So, is that a trans girl?
I don't know. I don't keep up with the
terminology.
terminology.
Either. So, whatever that is.
If you look like a girl, I'll call you a girl. If you look like a boy, I'll call you a boy.
I think
that's the way I look at it.
I'd be the same way. So, whatever this young person's going through, they obviously, need some help. But
they might really be struggling.
Absolutely. No. They are struggling.
Bullying under any circumstance is not okay.
They are struggling.
And the trans community has a 40% chance of suicide.
I know.
This is a big issue, but that tells you that this is a mental health issue.
Correct. And so there's no, that person needs some help. But I don't think going to a bathroom where, your sex, your biological sex is different, is going to make, it's not going to benefit you or the other girls.
It's going to draw more attention. But as we know, there are plenty of people that like to draw attention just to have that victim card.
And so, and again, I'm not an attorney. I don't know how you accommodate that.
Whenever it comes to kids, it's tough. But
I would never leave it to, and this would just be my style, is, hey, let's go talk to the principal. And can we accommodate this student in a way that they can take care of what they got to take care of, but it doesn't, create issues, whether it's safety, comfortability issues for other students.
Correct.
But also, you don't have no offense to ambulance chasing attorneys, but you know what I mean? Because that's what the school is so afraid of. That's what the school boards are so afraid of, is that exposure, that liability to, I think there's been some court cases in Virginia and wherever else.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up, is there was a Virginia case that the NAACP legal defense sued.
God, I cannot believe the NAACP would sue.
So they claim that it violated the Equal Protection Clause.
Okay. Never mind.
Under discrimination of basis of sex in violation of Title IX. First of all, we're not talking about sex. We're talking about gender. And if we're talking about sex, then it should not be a violation.
Agreed.
So, sex,
folks,
sex is different than gender.
Well,
according to the left, whether left or right, sex is one thing, gender is another. You don't go to get your driver's license and it says gender, it says sex. Male, female.
Yep.
XY.
They used to be interchangeable.
Right. And they don't let you put Y on there.
Yes, please. What was that from Austin Powers?
Yeah. What is your sex? Yes.
Man, that's bringing from way back.
Sorry.
But yeah, so clearly, this is a complicated, it's gotten complicated. I don't think it's that complicated. I really don't. We went through this with the gender.
But we're going to end up having to file legislation to fight it in court, to withhold, to get over that precedent that was set due to a Virginia court. But we can, at the same time, our high schools can implement policy, which I think our school board will. But all that's going to do is cause them to get sued.
Yes, correct.
And a lot of these problems are, and they want to take it to a court to try and sue, but I don't see a South Carolina court system sitting there and saying sex is the same thing as gender.
I agree with you.
And I would rather have it there. Let's have this conversation in a red state versus a blue state, and let's see where it goes.
Yeah.
About to open up again.
All right. So another thing that there was a House subcommittee that took up, I think it's an education subcommittee that took up DEI. And I'm not sure if you co-sponsored that one or you're on that.
It may be one of the ones that I'm on. I believe in getting rid of DEI because I believe it causes racism. You're judging someone based on their skin color. And for those of you that don't know, like I truly think if you want to stop racism, quit asking me for their race. I have 3 boys, all 3 different races, all by the same woman. I'll let y'all figure that out, or I'll discuss it in a later podcast.
Were you just playing games with the hospital?
No, I mean, my boys come out different skin colors, so the hospital just wanted to write it down. And then with Callahan, they told me I had to choose a sex, which I always, or not a sex, excuse me. I would have said yes, please. They told me I had to choose a race, and I always check every box. They come back and said, Mr. Guffey, you can't do that. And I said, well, bring out your skin chart, hold it up to a skin, and then we'll choose based on that. Which, of course, they didn't like that. And they said, how about we just write biracial? So Gavin was Hispanic, Cohen was Caucasian, and Callahan is biracial. All by the same mother and father. And this is done by the hospital staff as they come in.
That is great.
So, I mean, but I believe that if you want to stop racism, quit asking people their race. You're trying to divide us over something that where we are not supposed to judge one another over.
Right. So when it comes to that, I'm looking at, they want to know what the kid is because that will also help break down health statistics. That will help you know what I mean? But, so it's not so much to divide us. It's just more to, I mean, my background, I don't know what your background is.
I don't care what they want to know. It shouldn't even be a discussion.
Saying, my background is Native American, Hispanic. I know this is like, you're looking at me, you're like, bro, you're milk white. What are you talking about? But my birth name, as Barry Baker, I think, put on Facebook.
Christopher?
Yeah, it's Christopher. But I was born Christopher Heath Hernandez, right? Yeah. My biological father, for whatever reason, left when I was young. And but I carried his name. So I grew up Heath Hernandez.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I was 18 that I took my mom's maiden name, which is Sessions. She was the one who raised me.
Right. That
was sort of a
tip of the hat to say thank you, Mom.
Yeah.
And I want to carry your name, not someone that left me.
That's right. I am your son.
Correct.
And, I'll honor that. So, yeah, I sometimes, and, I wouldn't say it's naive, but maybe it's just my idealism speaking.
Do you check H whenever they ask you your race?
No, I've never put Hispanic or American Indian.
So I typically put Hawaiian Island as my option whenever it comes around to ask me.
Yeah.
But, with my wife, I didn't know she was Hispanic until we went to go get married. And we're sitting in the courthouse, and they asked her race, and she said Hispanic. And I looked at her and was like, you're Hispanic? That woman looked like y'all aren't going to last.
Really?
But I really just didn't care. I mean, she didn't speak Spanish. I didn't understand that she was Panamanian. Like, none of that mattered to me.
Correct.
Because race should have never been an issue to begin with. And then whenever Gavin was born, they sent in a translator to talk to my wife. My wife doesn't speak Spanish. But they had him listed on his birth certificate as Hispanic, which Gavin was very brown whenever he was born. And then Cohen was born. He was born early. I'm the one sitting in NICU with them. So whenever they come in, they see me, they're like, oh, yeah, he's Caucasian. They listed him as Caucasian. And then Callie, both of us are sitting in the room. That's whenever the problem ensued because they wanted me to check the box, and I don't check boxes.
Yeah. So that similar thing happened with my firstborn, Emma. Man, she comes out, and again, tongue in cheek here, but looking like a migrant baby.
Yeah.
You know, full head of black hair, just like I did. Full head, thick, dark hair. And people are like, what? Now, Emma's now blonde headed and, you know, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't.
Have you done the DNA test?
Yeah. Yep. A lot of Mexican, a lot of Iberian Peninsula, so Spain.
So my wife shares citizenship with Panama.
Okay.
But what I found out, whenever we did the DNA test, she has no South American in her at all.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, well, but she did have Fiji Islands, which is like less than 2% have ever left the Fiji Islands.
Yeah, right.
A lot of Middle East and everything else. Well, what we found out was her ancestors were actually Spanish Jews that fled during World War II and then became advisors to the president of Panama, and then he issued these citizenships to them.
Okay.
So that kind of turned things around. Now, with me, I'm the guy who was always, you know,
I'm about to say, what's your heritage?
I was typically the minority in the neighborhoods I was raised in. Yeah. So everyone always say, oh, you can't judge that because you're just a white man. I'm like, screw you. My mom always told me I was part Cherokee and all this other stuff. So I'm going to do a DNA test. 93% Northern European, 7% Viking. Nothing else. Like, you couldn't be more white.
I was just going to say.
My mom still argues. She's like, no, you're part Cherokee Indian. I'm like, well, the DNA doesn't say that I am.
Yeah, so I was going to say a lot of folks in the Carolinas, Choctaw, Cherokee, Catawba. You know, and so that's my great-grandfather.
And now Melissa's grandfather was actually Catawba Indian. And what's funny is you listen to, so her grandfather that married her grandmother while he was stationed in Panama. Okay. So he met her while he was stationed down in Panama, brings her back to the U.S. Well, you've got the race situations going on here in Rock Hill. So you had the counter sit down, but it's a black and white war. They're brown.
Yeah.
They're catching hell from both sides. So she did not want to speak Spanish in the home because that put a target on them. She wanted the kids to assimilate within the area.
And that's important. You know,
correct.
If you were to pick up and move to Spain, you know, I think
I'm going to speak Spanish.
Yeah, it's going to be
a whole lot easier to get what I want than me trying to argue with you that you should understand me.
Otherwise, it'll be a little isolating. So
there would be no luck for me. I'd be out of no luck. I took 4 years of Spanish.
Yeah.
2 classes each semester and barely made it through Spanish 2. I think it was a sympathy pass.
Yeah, so we're going to be seeing that DEI bill, I'm sure, at some point. And you know, we've talked about this before. I think the spirit of DEI, or in the spirit of equality, we get down with.
I did back then. I don't now.
Oh, no. I'm saying
same thing with affirmative action.
Well, I'm not saying DEI. I'm just saying equality.
Yes.
We're down with the spirit of what Dr. King said. I think that's literally.
If we all treated each other equal, then we wouldn't have this.
And you even quoted him almost word for word. You did not paraphrase. But so I was reading a good article about this subject, DEI, and some of the backlash that's coming in some of our public universities. And I wanted to read it for the 2 listeners because
you got to quit saying 2 listeners because everybody keeps coming up to me saying they're number 3.
So, and it talks about the difference between what you and I are talking about, equality versus equity. And I thought the way this paragraph put it in the article was just awesome. While diversity and inclusion are generally seen as positive goals in the workplace and academia, the equity part of DEI is more controversial. Equality posits that people should be treated the same in all circumstances and given equal opportunity.
Which is constitutionally sound.
Man, we can, and just in the spirit of faith and everything else, man, we get down with that. While equity seeks equal outcomes.
That sounds communist to me.
Even if some people must be treated differently in order to achieve or force an equal outcome.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that at all.
That for me, man, I was like, you know what? I got to talk about this on the podcast because that succinctly put it spoke to the spirit of my.
I mean, that is the basis.
That's the crux of the argument.
Yeah, I mean, that's the basis of Marxism.
Man, it's just, I mean, listen, folks, if you think that you are going to be given anything in this life, you're fooling yourself.
You're 50% right, according to our current welfare state.
And, you know, I mean, this is a serious topic, but nothing in this life will come easy.
No.
That you will value. It just won't.
I can agree with that.
Everything comes through hard work. It just does. And I'm not saying backbreaking, you know, labor, but hard work in the sense of your time, your effort, your money, your resources. That's what we're built on here in South Carolina and in this country. You are going to work your ass off for it. Yeah. You know?
I just roll with life sucks. You'll die one day.
God. You know, I in church the other week that we were talking about a verse, and I really enjoyed what it said. It talked about it might have been a psalm. Talked about you're asking God for strength for today, hope for tomorrow, and I was like, man, ain't that the truth?
That's my next campaign slogan.
I felt, boy, I needed that this week. I tell you, man.
The hope message is what gives people, I mean, truthfully, I think that's what got Obama. Everyone had this hope that we're going to be more unified. And unfortunately, I feel like we became more divided once that happened. But I think people thought that it was going to be more of a unity moment.
I tell you, I was a big McCain guy. So even when McCain ran for president back in 2000 against Bush, I volunteered on that campaign.
I was on Rand Paul. Screw you. We can fight over that.
Yeah.
Ron Paul, excuse me.
Yeah. You're showing your age now, dog. But so yeah, I was a McCain guy, and then when he ran, even though you knew he was about to get his butt whooped.
Yeah.
I mean, once Obama got out of that Democratic primary, you knew just the momentum.
But this becomes a problem though. So everyone, let's say South Carolina Republicans, if you want to say they're MAGA Republicans, right? You look at Arizona, they're not MAGA Republicans. They're McCain Republicans, correct? And now we're saying, okay, let's close primaries and we're only going to hear from, we only want MAGA Republicans to vote. And then we're complaining that the election is stolen in Arizona due to all these moderates not being able to vote. It's frustrating. Sorry, I got off my ADHD medication wears off by this time of day.
No, so I was just going to agree with you. You know, even though I was pulling for McCain, when Obama won, it was a moment in time. It was a moment in history for this country, and I knew it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I wasn't happy about it, and I wasn't happy, but it was a moment in time to see, our generation, and I feel like our generation is the change, where people are not judging. Oh, I think so too.
We are the bridge generation.
Correct.
We are. We were raised by parents who lived in a different country.
Correct.
And in a different time. And so we were raised one way. We had our own life experience and said it doesn't have to be that way.
Correct.
Or it may have been that way for my parents who I love and respect, but it's not going to be that way for my kids.
Right.
You know what I mean? And, that's the way I've always raised my kids.
I remember getting mad at Gavin because we never talked color with the kids growing up. And Gavin came in one day and he said, the black guy. And I was like, what did you say? I'm getting very upset. Why are you judging someone based on their skin color? Now, he was talking about the black ninja on the G.I. Joe movie. So there was a white ninja.
Oh, snake eyes,
wore all
baby.
White, and there was one that wore all black. But yeah, he was talking about the black guy off of G.I. Joe. And but it infuriated me. It's like, how dare you start identifying people by that? I want people to, or I want my kids to be different. And even though with me growing up in a minority neighborhood, we would constantly say things that people might find offensive, but it was all out of love.
Correct.
And
well,
nowadays,
it goes back to
you
what
can't
we
even
talked.
say that. They want to look at a word instead of intent, and then it becomes an issue.
Well, and it goes back to what we talked about last week: is knowing someone's heart.
Correct.
You know, I mean,
every law we have is judged off of intent.
Yeah,
It truly is.
and so yeah. I mean, we'll, you know, and I know this DEI thing is a hot button issue. You know,
We don't have drums today. We've got xylophone.
is that
It's that
xylophone or
5-year-old again, I
piano
guess.
or what? But no, and I think we just need to move more towards an equality, more towards a.
We are, and that becomes my fear. I feel like we are just going too far to where we're trying to separate ourselves out. And I think I've said this before. I have 2 gay brothers, and I think I've even seen it within their group to where it's no longer just okay to say, I'm gay. Now you've got to identify as LGBTQ plus and whatever other letters that are added.
Right.
Because everyone wants their individuality, which goes back to the gender study, whereas I can't just be male or female. I've got to be something unique, and I've got to be this unicorn. And I'm sorry, nobody's special. Like, whatever your mama or daddy told you, you're not special. Screw you. Like, life sucks. How about you be a part of it and do the best that you can?
Yeah, and again, just because our generation, I've never understood the pronoun thing.
I don't.
I was like, wait, what?
Was it episode 1 where I said what my pronouns were?
Oh, yeah. Well, I got an email from someone, and I think it was like an established, whatever it was.
Was it the Republican caucus?
No, but the signature of this gentleman had like he, him. I don't even know how to do that.
Yeah, I typically just delete.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And I guess that's
whenever I ran, and my LinkedIn profile had my pronouns, but it's because they required you to choose pronouns. And I put thee, she, it, and then whenever I started running for office, they're like, you got to remove that. And I was like, what?
You should probably change your LinkedIn.
But no, I mean, like, don't require me to sit here and put my pronouns. Like, look at me. Do I look like a chick? If I don't look like a chick, then don't call me by female pronouns.
Hey, I totally agree. I didn't even know what a cis male was until I was called that. And I said, what?
Under
cis?
no circumstance am I calling you they, them, or whatever else. No, you're him or her. Like, that's the way I'm approaching it.
What'd your mama name you?
Yeah.
That's what I'm calling you.
Give me your name. Oh, Pat? Okay, Pat, how are you doing today?
Yeah, so, well, on a lighter note, man, it was great to see the Winthrop students. I know we didn't give them the time that we wanted to on Thursday because of this.
That was one of my highlights. I didn't know that they called it woo.
Hey.
So as soon as we were taking the picture and they said woo, I was like, dang.
Yep. And just for the 2 listeners, maybe 3, you know, Guffey and I, how did you start listening to Wu-Tang? Because, I mean, I thought that was my generation.
No, I was listening to Wu-Tang whenever it was underground.
So, I mean, 36 Chambers came out in like, what, 94?
No, man.
93?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's when I'm in high school. That's when, like, you were
Wu-Tang was later
wearing
on.
diapers, man.
No, Wu-Tang was later on in my hip hop
Was that like
generation.
golden oldies for you?
No, I went from Big Daddy Kane to Wu-Tang.
Yeah, that's right.
But no, I mean, just the lyrics, and it was always like stories, and it was that teenage years to where it was like everything was a movie.
Oh, man, I had a neighbor.
It was a perfect fit.
Hey, neighbor, shout out to Chris Lightsey on Wampee Curve in Somerville. Man, I'm telling you, that guy got he was one of those guys that would go to the record store, the music store, when the release was coming out. So he had the Source magazine. He knew every time the hottest stuff was coming out, and he said he was one of the first ones. Hey, man, you want to ride it with me? I was like, where are we going? He was like, Tunes. And I said, okay, that's the music store in Somerville. And I said, what are we doing? He's like, man, there's this new group called Wu-Tang.
Yeah.
And I said, all right. And when I got it, I looked at the vinyl.
Protect your neck.
Yeah. And I'm like, what is this, man? They look like ninjas. What's going on here? And yeah, rest is history.
Man, I can't tell. I used to confuse people whenever I was younger because I mentioned I drove a lowrider van that I competed in car audio competitions in high school. But I would confuse people because they're like, you don't make any sense, Guffey. Like, you talk like a redneck, you dress like a prep, and you listen to hip hop.
Yep.
Like, at that time, everyone's like trying to find their own identity. But I guess with the multicultural area I grew up in,
I was
fine with a mullet and listening to hip hop. But everybody wants to put you in this box. I feel the same way politically now.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, everyone wants to put you in this box, and it's like, are you carrying a blue flag or a red flag? Like, in today's society, I'm carrying a red flag.
Yeah.
But at certain times in history, no, I wasn't carrying that red flag. Like, I don't agree just because you're part of a group, and the groups are what try. Matter of fact, the reason I am Republican is because of the creed where it says it is my right to be uncommon.
Yeah.
It is my right to think freely. What am I doing if I'm sitting here saying every time you and I disagree with something where you're not even a real Republican? Like, that becomes the problem.
Oh, we're there.
Oh, we're past there. But, I think was it Forrest Gump that said you can't fix stupid? I can't remember which one it was.
But, keeping lines of communication open, even for those that you disagree with, is important.
But you're a whole lot better. Like, so if you want to have an open line communication,
hey, we had a good conversation, I thought, with some party folks this past week that we may not have lockstep agreed with.
Yeah.
But we kept the lines open, and they said, hey, you know what? I kind of agree with you on this one. Thank you for calling and explaining why y'all voted the way you did.
Right.
Because if folks are only hearing from one side, then what else do they have to believe?
Correct.
You know what I mean? That's gospel. So,
trying to understand, and I'm not the best messenger.
Well, I'm not saying
because you do a whole lot better because I get
I get frustrated.
I guess the way that I talk, a lot of
I
people,
think my editing department stays open longer. You know?
That's the truth.
But anyway.
That filter's gone for me.
Back to Winthrop. It was great to have Winthrop Day. We had several folks. Yep.
Sorry.
We had several folks from Winthrop. Sheila Bulkhart was there and a lot of other students. And, we just got to mill around and talk to them because we didn't get out until, 15 after 2 on Thursday or so. And they had planned a lunch with us from 11:30 to 2 o'clock so we could sort of spend time with them, answer their questions, have a panel discussion and fellowship with them. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
Did not go according to plan.
Just kind of rushing in there. Well, at least we can take a picture. I got to talk to a few students.
I did too. I've actually been texting back and forth with a nice guy named Armin. He went over to Spain last year or the year before, and I said, man, it's my 20th anniversary. That's where I want to go. But here's the deal. And I told him what my vision of a perfect vacation would be. Just me and my wife.
Yeah.
And he said, you got to go to Malaga and Cadiz or Cadiz, Spain. And I said, that's it.
Nice.
So if anyone has any vacation recommendations for southern Spain on the Mediterranean, hit it on the podcast. Hit it in the comments. So next week, quick look ahead. Man, we got some things going on. I'm just going to go through. I know we got session, we got some subcommittee and committee, but man, I want to highlight next Tuesday is Disability Advocacy Day. Yep. You remember the girl and her mom who brought us cookies and we got them?
Yes.
Yep. They'll be there again. I think they had a little miracle field or park in Columbia that they told me about last year.
I had a great experience this week. I had a kid coming from the same day as Winthrop Day, a kid coming from York Tech to kind of working on filming. And he was down there and he was just kind of hanging out in the lobby because I thought we'd have a lot more time where I could record something with him.
Correct.
And I come down there and there was a little girl down there with Down syndrome and the governor come out. And as soon as he come out, and of course he's coming out with his staff and everything else, she runs up and gives him the biggest hug. And, you don't just run up to the governor, right?
Yeah, right.
He greeted her. He sat there and talked to her. And then as soon as she went away from him, You know, I'm just sitting there with this massive smile on my face, and then she comes and runs, gives me a hug, gives the other kid a hug. Like it's wonderful.
Hey, I'm telling you.
So we've got both of our causes this week. We've got mental health awareness on Wednesday.
Yeah, we have Disability Advocacy Day on Tuesday, and we have Mental Health Advocacy Day on Wednesday. Alzheimer's Day is that day, so wear some purple.
I'm wearing green for mental health.
Yeah, so you know, we need to coordinate this a little better, don't we?
Yeah.
So we got mental health and Alzheimer's on Wednesday.
And I think that we're going to shed a lot of tears this week.
Man.
Last year it was the blind.
Oh.
School of the Blind, whenever they came and sang.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed, I don't know if I'll cry or not. I enjoy these days because, man, it gets you back to why you do what you do.
Right.
It gets you back to why you face, you know, when you want to beat your head up against a wall, it's because these folks need a voice.
Whenever we're arguing with people that should agree with us because they're listening to a false narrative, this makes it worthwhile.
Correct. Yep. And, you know, if you ever ask me, why'd you run? This is why.
Yeah.
You know, to give folks who don't have a voice a voice.
If you ever asked me, it was to keep someone crazier than me from getting in. But, you know.
All right. Well, we got a good look ahead for next week. We'll see what we can do on the judicial reform bill. I know the Senate is taking that up. And, you know, just like senators, man, trying to race to get there first. You know, claim the victory.
I would rather it be the Senate and the House trying to claim the victory than in our own party who's trying to claim victory.
Well, you know those.
I mean, but the sun is going to rise regardless.
That's right. Those senators jealous of the brooch. All right. Want to thank our sponsors, Comer Distributing. Chip and his team do a great job. And like again, at the front of the episode, we were drinking the MARZEN Lager by Amor, Artis Brewing. What do you think, man?
It's got the 2 dots above the A, so I don't know how to speak German, so I don't know how to say that.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I should spit whenever I see any type of German, right?
So, beer good?
The beer is good. I am impressed by the beer. It's darker, but it's not too heavy.
Yeah. It's got a good layered flavor, but
yeah,
it's still light.
I haven't had anything that I don't like from more artists so far.
Yeah. So also check out 742 North. Thanks for sponsoring. If you need office space, Wi-Fi, a good cup of coffee, check them out, 742 North.
Yes. Thanks y'all for joining.
See you next week.
Peace out, suckers.
Anything you want or who you want to be, you can be. Just remember those who make this life so easy.